Hey, what's going on, everyone? Welcome to another episode of About Abroad, where it's my job to introduce you to people who have built amazing lives for themselves in various foreign corners of the globe. We're talking with expats and thought leaders about moving abroad, remote work, visas, and all the fun and practical knowledge that you need to know to follow in their footsteps. If you've ever dreamed of making a life for yourself overseas, maybe working remotely or embracing long-term travel, retiring or studying abroad, or even just taking a peek inside life beyond your borders, you've landed in the right place. My guest today is one of the coolest cats you will ever meet. His name is Jesse, and he is the founder and CEO of Workforce, which is an online publication dedicated to all things remote work, putting out some of the best content on that subject that I have ever seen. And not only that, he practices what he preaches. He is leading his remote team from his Airstream trailer, which he and his wife ping pong across the U.S. in and have been doing for a couple years. He left a very lucrative career in San Francisco to make this big life choice and decision, and has just not looked back since then. We talk about remote work, the future of work, leading remote teams, but then also just about what life is like living in a trailer and traveling around the U.S. and some of the road less traveled. So whether you want to follow in his footsteps in terms of remote work or big career changes or just road tripping around the United States, he has a ton of great knowledge to share. And it was just super fun catching up with him. So I hope you'll join me in welcoming Jesse to About Abroad. Jesse, welcome to About Abroad. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great, Chase. It's great to be here. Thanks, man.
Yeah, thanks. I see, I'm lucky I've got you here on the Zoom so I can see you. The audience can only hear you, but setting the stage for them, it looks like you are indeed in the Airstream. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's not all for a PR show. I actually live in a 27-foot Airstream trailer, and I'm in the galley right now. It's 200 square feet, but we have all the comforts. We have a shower and a bathroom and a queen size bed, and I'm in the dining room slash office.
Dude, that's amazing. And do you get 200 square feet in there?
Maybe it's 198, but yeah, we like to say 200 so we can sleep
Just
a little
counting.
better at night. But yeah, that's about it.
Man, that's amazing. I have some I think I have some friends here in Europe that would say that's a big flat. So that's great. I didn't know they were that big inside, actually. That's cool.
Yeah, and ours isn't actually even the biggest. They have, 30-foot and 33-foot models. The reason we went with a 27-foot is because at 28 feet and under, you can get into and camp in 80% of national parks. And so for us, it's a great manageable size. We have enough space, but it's small enough that we can get into a lot of really interesting, national park places or off the grid places that we couldn't if we had a bigger RV. And I should say, Chase, too, like I'm talking about it, like I know what I'm talking about. My wife and I, before we decided to do this, had never set foot in an RV. So,
Really?
we're either very brave or very stupid, or some sliding scale of both now. But now I'm a little more seasoned. Now I know a little bit about what's up.
It takes a little bit of stupidity to do these kind of things, I think, but like without that, we wouldn't make these big leaps of faith, and we'd just like follow the path and kind of live a little more mundane. So I think I've got a little bit of that baked into me, and it's come back to bite me a few times, and mostly worked out though.
Well, mine's working out so far, so I'll knock wood. It's been a really awesome experience, and I'm glad to be a little stupid in that way.
How long have you been in the RV again? Or do you say RV? Is that the right word, or do you say Airstream?
If you want to be a little snooty about it, you might say Airstream. Airstream is sort of the old school whatever. So I guess it depends on the audience, right? You could say either. We've been doing it, Chase, for actually, I think it's almost exactly 2 years to the day since we signed the paperwork on the trailer. And we moved into the trailer in February of 2019. So we've been doing it for about 2 years full time. And when I say full time, I have to sort of qualify because there's some hardcore people out there. We live in the trailer for about 8 months out of the year. And we spend about, 3 or 4 months in the summer at a family house that my family has in upstate New York. So it's a great balance for us to spend the winter months, and we tend to ping pong across the country. So, our life was on the West Coast in California. My wife's family is in Nevada, and my family is on the East Coast. So we go back and forth, at least once every year. So that's been pretty cool. We've gotten to see a ton of the country. We've done 39 states in that time. And my qualification for a state is having towed the trailer through the state. So there's like one or two states that we haven't spent a night in, but the majority of them we've actually visited and spent some time in. So that's been pretty cool.
It counts for sure. It counts. Just driving through. I drove through Kansas one time, and I counted. I've been to Kansas. I've seen it.
Yes, exactly. And if you, especially if you've towed a 28-foot trailer, at 65 or 70 miles an hour, that counts in my book. So
for sure.
That's the qualification for me to put the sticker on the door. That's how we do it.
That's such a cool balance that you have there, though, like getting to call a place home for a couple months, especially like upstate New York in the summer, gorgeous, and then touring around the country and seeing the different corners, escaping to the South during the cold winters. I imagine like it's a really fantastic balance. And it makes you wonder, like, it is accessible for people to do this, but it sounds so far-fetched. And I wonder why there is that dichotomy. Like you and I are both advocates for remote work, and we'll get into lots of that today. But like it is amazing to me sometimes that just people listening to this and people that I talk to are like if they hear your story, they're just like, man, that guy's living the dream. Like that sounds amazing. And it is accessible, but people don't do it that often. I wonder why. Do you ever think about that?
Yeah, well, thought a lot about it, right? Like I think that it comes down to something that we talk about at work too, but I think it comes down to inherited wisdom, right? You're sort of supposed, you get this idea from society and from your parents that you're supposed to, have this progression and, go to this college and get married and have a kid and own a house and have the job and get the gold watch. And I think in so many ways, that our generations and the generations before us are sort of chipping away at that and questioning, what is it? Why is that the inherited wisdom, and why should I live my life that way? And who's telling me to do that? And I think when you begin to chip away at that and question some of those things, a lot of possibilities can open up. And, for us, as you say, like it seems like this far-fetched thing. And I tend to tell people and see their jaws drop, and that's really cool. But, for us discovering this, as I said earlier, like we had never, we didn't grow up in an RVing families or really have exposure to it. But, the RV lifestyle, that there's something like 1 million people who live full time in RVs in the United States. And, they've been doing that for decades. And so, for us, it was very, once we made the leap and decided to get educated on it, it was actually a really easy learning curve, because there's so many people out there who are living this way and doing this stuff. And they're sharing so much of it on YouTube, on Facebook. There's great communities. Instagram has a great community. And so once you plug into those knowledge bases, you can really short circuit it. And, for us, when we have a problem with our furnace, we can go on a forum and say, we have this problem with our furnace, and we'll have, 10 replies in an hour, of people helping us figure it out. And that's true with the furnace, but that's also true with, residency or, financial questions. There's all these kinds of ways that you can really short circuit this and get smart on how to live in these, air quotes, alternative lifestyles really easily. It's really cool.
Yeah, the community that happens around this sort of thing is mind-blowing to me. I mean, you mentioned those numbers. I had no idea it was over 1 million people just in the US living this way. And I found it kind of to be the same with the camper van lifestyle in Europe. My wife and I have a camper van, as you know, and like we're on our second attempt. I mentioned the stupid decisions I've made before. One of them revolves around that. We can dive into it if you want, but the first round was a disaster. Round 2 seems to be going well, but the community around it is awesome, man. We're in these like you get so much help. We're in these Facebook groups and WhatsApp groups and such, where you just, anytime you have a question, like you said, you have 1 million responses within like minutes, and people are really eager to help and kind of share the knowledge. So yeah, I think that's really cool. And it's like a fun way, especially when you're living a little bit nomadically, to kind of build some human connection.
Yeah, no doubt. And Chase, that's a little bit what you're doing with this podcast. Syndicating that knowledge and getting some different perspectives out there, which I think is is super cool because there's so much to be learned. There's so much I can learn from you and having this conversation. Before we started recording, I was picking your brains on European citizenship and all these kinds of questions. There's so much that can be learned. And if you sort of apply a little bit of a hacker mentality to how you're living, you can unlock some pretty cool experiences.
Yeah, and you can kind of battle against that. I loved the phrase that you used, the inherited wisdom, like that is at the sort of the genesis of it all, I guess, is like people have these preconceived notions of what life is. And when you start to buck that trend a little bit and think outside the box, you realize like there's a lot that's out there that's accessible to me if I want to reach out and grab it. It's just, as you said, you got to hack the system a little bit. So yeah, it's fun for me to dive into those things and kind of like dig through them and figure out how you can cut those corners and really kind of tailor your life to what it is that you want out of it.
No question. Another thing too that I've found is that, that mentality and that sort of hacker approach is a little bit contagious, but not maybe necessarily contagious in the way. So, for example, this is just the example that comes to mind. When we started doing this, a lot of people, a lot of friends, a lot of family were saying how inspired they were, but nobody went out and bought an RV.
Yeah.
And what happened is that you see people sort of doing their own thing, that they, taking steps to realize plans or dreams that maybe they had on the back burner, we're planning for someday. And in our case, my father, and he says that my father built a little cottage on our property in upstate New York that he's been talking about doing for 20 years. And he finally decided to pull the trigger. Certainly it may have had something to do with the fact that we were moving into the house for 4 months out of the year and we were, maybe crowding him out a little bit. He says that wasn't the driving motivation, but it's been really cool to see that inspiration be a little bit contagious in our circles. It's been really a lovely byproduct.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah. Getting to share that enthusiasm and kind of zest for life through a different avenue, even if it's not following in your footsteps, it's tackling something, doing something a little bit different than you have been and like expanding the horizons a little bit.
Exactly. Yeah. Super cool.
Did you have anybody that maybe not motivated you, but inspired you guys early on? Like where did the idea to transition to a trailer and bounce around the US ping ponging back and forth kind of start from?
So, well, it's a multifaceted thing, right? It's not linear.
Yeah.
So on the one hand,
was it like one day the light bulb just came on?
No, it's much more, when you look back, there's a lot of breadcrumbs that led you here, but it really was born in some sense out of necessity. So there's sort of kind of two things. The first thing is that I made the decision about 3 years ago to found my own business. We can talk about that in a bit if you want. So, I was living and working in San Francisco, very traditional. I had been, I was the poster child for inherited wisdom in a lot of ways, right? So, I lived and worked in San Francisco for 2 decades. I was an executive at some of the largest digital media companies out there and based in the Bay Area, and I loved it. I loved San Francisco. My wife owned a vintage clothing store in the city. So, we were very much tethered to San Francisco. And if you had asked me 5 or 6 years ago, I would have told you they'd bury me in San Francisco. But the city, even before pre-pandemic, the city was changing a lot. A lot of money was coming in. It was culturally shifting. And around that time, I had the notion to start my own business, a company called Workforce that is focused on actually remote work. But at the time, I wasn't thinking about becoming a digital nomad myself. I was thinking about self-funding the business. And so, looking at the balance sheet, it was pretty clear that trying to self-finance this business and trying to pay for housing and all the other stuff that goes along with living in the Bay Area were not compatible desires. And so we started having to look at and think about, how can we make this work? And my wife, I think in part because of her love of vintage, and she owned a vintage clothing store, she had always been enamored with Airstreams and just the aesthetic of, the classic, silver bullet, whatever you want to call it. And so, we had talked about that and we love to travel and it was always like wouldn't that be cool? You know what I mean? But like, no immediacy, you know what I mean? Like 10, 15 years down the road, or maybe we'll rent one. And so as we were trying to solve this riddle of how do we move forward and bootstrap a startup, and where do we live and how are we going to do that? There was sort of a light bulb moment of like, wait a minute, like, what does it cost to live in an Airstream? And so for us, very long story short, we went from paying $4,000 a month for renting a 2-bedroom apartment in San Francisco to paying roughly $725 a month to own this Airstream that we've lived in for the last 2 years. So it made a lot of sense from a financial standpoint, and had this really great byproduct of us being able to check off this bucket list item that we hoped we might get to someday. And then, the third benefit, which, was really exciting for me, was that living in this way and becoming a full-time digital nomad has really allowed me to walk a mile in the shoes of the workforce audience. Workforce is focused on flexible and remote work. And so it allows me as the CEO and founder to really understand what that means and some of the great things about it and some of the challenges about it, so that I can speak from an authentic space when I'm addressing my audience, which is really cool and a happy accident, if I'm honest.
Man, that has to be so inspiring for people that are listening to this, or that eventually get to hear your story, that like there is the possibility of the escape, like from the grind. Even if you love your job, we share a lot of things in common, as we've discussed before, but that's something else. Like I sort of left like a more traditional style of work to pursue more of a location independent lifestyle. And I actually liked what I was doing. Like I liked the company, I liked the people I worked with, I liked the everything was good. Like it checked all the boxes, and especially from the inherited wisdom standpoint, like really checked all the boxes. And anyway, but to make the change was scary. And, a lot of people we actually had some friends that sort of tried to have like an intervention with us, because we originally actually put a deposit down on an RV, on like a 26 or 28 foot RV, and planned to do exactly what you're doing in the US. Yeah. Cool. And we had some friends that kind of had like an intervention with us, like, you guys can't do this. But anyway, it's just funny because actually that RV did not work out because there was a mechanical issue and they couldn't get it fixed. And so they gave us our deposit back and said, keep shopping. And then we ended up shifting gears and doing something totally different. But anyway,
they had an intervention with you.
Yeah. It feels like, like things always work out. So anyway, that's a really long way of getting back to the point that, like, for anybody that's listening out there, I think Jesse's story is super interesting from the standpoint that, like, you can even be doing something you really like and still be on some level not really achieving your life goals. And it's okay to set that chapter to the side. And you're not really like, I think we have a tendency, I don't know if you agree with this, I would love to get your perspective, but like, I think we kind of tend to have a tendency to think that if we shift gears, if we make a big change in life, we're sort of like losing what we've invested. And, I would like to change that mindset a little bit. And, you're taking stuff with you, you're taking lots of great experience and contacts and information with you, and just transitioning it in a different way.
Yeah, no question. And I also consider myself lucky to fall in the bucket that you described of, really loving the life that I had and the job that I had and feeling very satisfied in that. I don't mean to use cheesy terms, but I felt a calling, right? I felt, I had found something that, I listened to too many podcasts, especially when you're driving, when you're hauling a trailer.
I was going to say, you've got the time for podcasts.
Yeah. Listen to a lot. Yeah. It's hard to read email when you're towing a trailer. Right. So listen to a lot of podcasts. And one of the, things that I've heard about, advice given to founders is that you need to find the thing that you are uniquely qualified to do. And when I had, the seed of the notion that has become workforce, the more angles I looked at that from, and the more people I spoke to, and the more I investigated it, the more I have become convinced that this is a good idea, that this can work, and that I am the right person to do that. And so, that conviction, led me to, take these steps and to, shift it and to live in this way. But it didn't come from a place of reactivity and trying to run away from something. It was really running towards something, which, again, I'm very, very lucky for. And it's been, it's worked out. Like, that's the other thing is to say that, we didn't know what to expect. We actually, once we decided to do it, my wife and I rented an Airstream in San Jose. We lived in San Francisco. We rented an Airstream in San Jose and took it down to, the California coast. So the first time I ever stowed an Airstream was on Highway 1. Down to Big Sur, which I don't recommend that being your first I at least was smart
That
enough
is
to,
really biting off a big
yeah.
task there.
Happily, I didn't own it. It was a rental, so something, I kid. But and we said, yeah, like we actually like this. But in the time that we've done it for the last 2 years, we've found that we actually like it more than we kind of dared hope we would, which I think has been a real blessing, and we're really grateful about that.
I would love to dive a little deeper into that, and I want to come back to workforce and actual like making work happen in this. So make sure we have time for that. But practically speaking, like when you say you have enjoyed it even more than you thought you would, what elements have sort of surprised you in a positive way, just about life on the road, life, and maybe also if you can touch a little bit on like the geographic aspect of different seeing different parts of the country and what's been a joy from that standpoint as well.
Well, I mean, they're similar things, right? So, one of the things that we've enjoyed has been seeing, not only just seeing the country, but being able to experience places in a depth that we never would have otherwise, traveling, via plane or going to cities, for a long weekend or even for a week. Actually being in these places and driving from place to place has been a real eye opener. But I think, so, and to start with answering the question, we don't plan to live this way forever, a rest of our life kind of thing. I'm not sure I could stay sane in 200 square feet, for the next 20 years. So, for us, that there's always been, we're not sure how long we're going to do it for, but there's always been a thought that this wouldn't be a permanent thing. And so it's been a really exciting experience in part for that reason. But we do think that, if all the chips, fall in place in the exact right way, and all of our, the bets we're making hit, an ideal future scenario for my wife and I would be to own, 2 or 3 small, 1-bedroom type apartments in different cities across the US, perhaps across the globe, that we use in, seasonally. So, go live there for 2 or 3 months. And then when we're not using them, renting them on the short-term market so that they can be a break even or sort of an investment property, so that we can bounce around to different places seasonally, but not be in a constant state of bouncing around as you are when you live in an RV. And so this journey has been, a big part of that has been about visiting places in the US that we think might fit that bill, or trying to discover places that might fit that bill. And so, as we've traveled, we've tried to go to places like, Asheville, North Carolina, and Savannah, Georgia, and Sedona, Arizona, all these places that that we've heard good things about, that we could maybe imagine ourselves, living in for an extended period at some point. And so that's been really exciting. But I think that, and by the way, like, and I picked like 3 of my favorite cities there, right? Like,
Can I interject real quick and ask,
Please, yeah.
did you mention Asheville for my benefit, or I don't know if
No,
you know
are you
my
from there?
connection to Asheville.
No, I
That's
don't.
so Asheville is where I call home in the
Oh,
US.
wow.
It's where I most recently lived in the US, and also where if and when we move back, that's where we will go. My brother lives there with his kids, and yeah, we're from my wife and I are from North Carolina, and we went to school at Appalachian State in the mountains there, 2 hours from Asheville. And so yeah,
Super
that's
cool.
like where we call home.
I had no idea that was not a gratuitous plug, but and so we have friends. Actually, we have friends, dear friends, from San Francisco, who, frankly, they were starting a family, having kids, and they kind of got squeezed out of San Francisco. They were teachers. They weren't, .com employees,
Oh,
and they
it
relocated
must
to
be rough.
Asheville and loved it. And we wanted to visit them. And I've always heard great things about Asheville. My mom's an artist, and so she's always, loved Asheville. From Nashville or Asheville, you may not know that Asheville has like one of the coolest and best RV parks in the U.S. I think it's called Campfire Lodgings, and it's set up on this ridge above a river that you would probably know the name of, like the Big River.
The New River,
It's
yeah.
sort of, yeah, that sort of goes. And so, you know, beautiful elevated back end sites that overlook, western facing, so you see the sunset. It's like a bucket list RV park, and they have maybe 7 or 8 of these sites that back in over with this view. We were able to get one of those, so that's that.
Wow.
As I say, something that a local may not even know about Asheville is you guys have a bucket list RV park in Asheville.
That's the truth, man. I mean, that's where you're getting to experience the US in a way that even locals don't get to experience where they live a lot of times. I mean, when you're traveling through, think about when you're on vacation, right? You see the city, you're all smiles and happy, and you're meeting people, and like in normal times, COVID times are a little different, but when you go on vacation, you end up like experiencing the city in a very different way than a local does. You everything's got, rose-colored glasses on, and you get to experience new areas of the city that people don't normally go to because they're just caught in their own little cycles. And so, yeah, man, I had no idea that exists in Nashville. And I said New River. It's the French Broad River. My friends back in
Yes.
Nashville will kill me.
Yes.
But but anyway, that's awesome. Well, you have a vote from me to when you decide to relocate somewhere, that one gets my vote for now.
Yeah, well, and you hit on the head in terms of the way that this mode of traveling has enabled us to experience these places. For us, we like to spend minimum a week, maybe 2 weeks in a given place, and so it's not taking a long weekend and staying in a hotel and going to the 3 restaurants. We got to go to the grocery store, and we got to go gas up the truck, and so you sort of, in some sense, you live a little bit like a local in these places. That's been great for us in terms of having a really in-depth experience, and more than the sort of long-term, could we imagine ourselves living in these places? There are some places that I can't imagine myself living in that are just mind-blowing. So, we've spent a lot of time going through, different places in Utah or Wyoming. We've been able to, and so little lingo lessons. So when you're RVing, if you're staying at an RV park or an RV resort, that's one way of doing it. And when you do that, you have full hookups, which means that you have, electricity and water and a sewer thing so that you can take a 20-minute shower if you want. But also in an RV, if you have solar panels and a battery and a little bit of know-how, you can do what's called boondocking. And that means that you take the RV and you go off in the middle of nowhere somewhere, and you hang out. You live off of your battery, your solar, and whatever you have, water in your tanks and that kind of thing. And so we're able to do that for about a week, 5 or 6 nights pretty comfortably. And so we've been able to go to some places in the middle of nowhere and be, very comfortable and really experience those places. And I'll, if it's okay, Chase, I'll do a shameless plug and tell you that my wife Lindsay runs our Instagram handle for our travels, and it's called wandering.america. So it's Instagram at wandering.america. And in some of those pictures, you'll see there's one picture that I love where we were actually driving. We were doing back-to-back drive days, and we stayed a night and boondocked outside of Green River, Wyoming. Green River, Wyoming is at 6,000 feet. And we drove up on this plateau above Green River, Wyoming, and camped at 7,000 feet on federal land. We were a mile and a half from the nearest other RV that we saw. And it's just absolutely stunning, beautiful on top of this plateau, miles off in the distance in the valley, you could see, I think, Interstate 80 or Interstate 70, and, the trucks driving in the middle of the night. And we set up camp there. We leveled the trailer. I caught up on email. We streamed a movie on Netflix, and we went to sleep. And I woke up in the morning, and I took a shower and brushed my teeth, and we got back in the truck, and we pulled out and, drove another 6 hours to wherever we were going next. And having those experiences is something you don't get if you aren't, living in this way. And so that's not lost on us too, right? And that is as much of a pleasure as it is, experiencing a city like Asheville or experiencing a city like Savannah, that we wouldn't have been able to get to do otherwise.
I had to pull up that picture. I had to find I was already following your Instagram account, but had to pull up that particular picture. And yeah, that's incredible. And what a way to finish off the workday,
Yeah.
writing emails from that scene. Yeah, please, like if you're listening to this and you want to be sucked into the RV lifestyle and traveling around America, wandering.america is a great handle to follow. You won't be disappointed.
Thank you for the plug. Yeah.
Yeah.
My wife won't be disappointed with some more followers. That's really good.
No, she does a great job managing the information and like the inspiration, which is kind of like two things I'm going for with this podcast, is definitely there. It makes me want to hit the road. And that's awesome. You guys can get a week in our camper van. We can get about 3 or 4, maybe 4 days. The water, we have solar panels, so the power is not an issue, but the water is what we run low on. And there's limited space for storage in a smaller camper van.
Yeah, that's our thing too. The availability of fresh water. You should look into, Chase, a very tactical piece of advice: a water bladder. So you can get a fresh water bladder that you can just store, 10 gallons of water in. So
nice.
that's something. We have a 40-gallon freshwater tank, but I have a 10-gallon freshwater bladder, so we can augment our fresh water supply. And then like another hot tip, and this is, I'm sure, too much information, so some of your listeners maybe want to cover your ears, but it's hard. If you're conserving water, showering is really tough. And so they make these things called Epic wipes that are like towel-sized baby wipes. And so you can take an Epic wipe shower. So they're invented by a Navy SEAL. And so they're these, gigantic, essentially, shower in a bag. And so, when we go off to boondock for a week, we make sure we're stocked up on the Epic wipes before we get out there.
Man, that is great. Epic wipes. My wife is a huge fan of having baby wipes around in the van, so I'll have to get on the Epic wipes, and that'll be like birthday present number 1. She'll be thrilled.
And pro tip: if you warm them up, if you put them near something warm, and it's a little less shocking than the cold Epic wipe shower.
This is years of road life experience. People soak it up.
Yeah.
No,
your
I
audience
think
can
actually
uncover their ears now if they were muting the gross stuff.
No, it is funny. It actually brings me to a point, because there are some things about the van life road, like it's very glamorous on Instagram, and you see a lot of this, like people just posting the most glamorous pictures, but there's surely some struggles. I can, things related to the bathroom, showering, and this sort of thing, and other sorts of things, like there's some downsides. You're in a small space with one other person. And so is there anything that, any tip you might give to somebody wanting to follow in your footsteps, where you say, like, be cautious about make sure you're this type of person, or whatever, anything you might pass on, some words of wisdom?
Yeah. I mean, I would say, if you're doing it like you and I do it, Chase, with a partner, make sure you've had a couple therapy sessions before you go, and that you can, that you have the ability to communicate, right? That I think is the biggest thing for us, is that it's a challenge. You have in the setup that we have all the comforts of home, but it's very condensed. Communication is really the big key. No surprise there. That's key in any relationship, but especially when you're in sort of this constrained environment. And so, it's been. Yeah, it hasn't all been the great Instagram, worthy photos. On the whole, it's been wonderful, but there have been challenges. And I think that, you want to be able to communicate through that and work through that, and, know when to give each other space, and learn, what's working, what's not working. And when there are challenges or problems, like, address them. You know what I mean? Like it's you can't really, you can't run off and sulk when you live in a 200 square foot trailer. So you want to address, whatever's going on, before it becomes a larger issue. So that's the biggest thing, I think.
There's no slamming the door and leaving. I'm going on a walk or something. You're like, well, we're in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you could do that. Yeah. You could do that kind of stuff. Yeah. But you can't, go off to the living room and, turn on the television without somebody, slamming doors.
I can still
slam the
you.
bathroom door. Yeah, exactly. You're not going to run away.
You're still in my space.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
We'll come back to kind of work and work-life balance and some of the things you've managed to do on the road, which I think is just super impressive. And I wanted to ask, what do you think your split is between, like, your life looks like a vacation, and I know that you're working very hard to launch what's already a successful company. So what percentage, if you had to put a number on it, in a given week or month or whatever, is your like work versus play
Yeah.
ratio?
Well, and so I say this, I said something similar to my mom. My mom was like, "Well, I hope you have hope you relax this weekend." And I was like, "Mom, I'm the founder of a company. Like, I can't relax. I like all I do is think about work, right?" So like whether the corollary or the caveat to this answer, Chase, is that when I'm hiking, thinking about work. When I'm towing the trailer, I'm thinking about work. When I'm emailing, I'm thinking. When I'm in the shower, you know what I mean? Like, I'm the founder of a business, so I think about this all the time. That said, I sort of fundamentally reject the idea that in order to make a business successful, you have to be in front of your laptop, pecking away, coding, writing an email, 19 hours a day, and drinking Soylent and, sleeping for a few minutes. I just don't think that that's, a healthy path. And I don't think that you need to do that to be successful. For me, I have found that I am more effective and more successful when I, do focused work, and when I give myself time to restore and regenerate and practice self-care. And so, in terms of the split, like, I'm working a lot, but, I do take time every day for elements of self-care. I don't start my day, I don't look at my email until I have completed a gratitude list and meditated for at least 10 minutes. And, that is time very well spent, right? Like, I'm less irritable. I'm more centered when I do that kind of thing. But to answer your question practically, like, when we are on the move more than we are at the moment, a given day or given week, I would say, one of those days is a move day. And a move day, I'm getting very little work done. So, we're up early, cleaning up the trailer, hitching up the trailer, towing for 5 or 6 hours, and then setting up where we go. Maybe it's a back-to-back drive day. So, one of my favorite fun facts about RV life is that Cracker Barrels have RV parking, and you're allowed to camp overnight in a Cracker Barrel. So that's one of my favorite things, is to tow all day and then park in a Cracker Barrel, and set
Do you
up
have
and
to
answer
eat
some
there or
emails.
anything, or they just say, yeah, just come and go?
I mean, you don't have to.
But why not? If you're there, I mean,
the breakfast is excellent. Yeah, the blueberry
Yeah.
pancakes. They have blueberry maple syrup with blueberries in the maple syrup and the blueberry pancake, and so it's great because you go there. We set up. We generally don't eat dinner there. We'll have our own dinner. Maybe watch a movie, go to bed, wake up. Somebody else makes you breakfast, and you're on the road again. And so on a day like that, or back-to-back days like that, I'm getting very little work done. And so but baking those in, and so we have a pretty good sense, and we plan pretty far in advance about where our travels will take us. A lot of people in this community prefer to be blown by the breeze. You know what I mean? They don't make a lot of reservations in advance. They sort of go where it takes them. And I guess I'd like to be that person. I'm not that kind of person. So we're much more plan in advance, do research about the places where we're going to go. And when we research places where we're going to go camp, whether it's a boondocking spot or an RV park or resort or a state park or a national park, we do a lot of research in advance. We have sort of, now, after doing this for a couple of years, we have pretty high standards about the kinds of places we want to go to and the kinds of places we want to stay. We also use an app called Campendium that I can't plug hard enough. It's sort of like Yelp for camping and campground reviews. And so they'll give you a review, 4 or 5 stars, whatever that is, campground reviews, but they also tell you how many bars of signal you're going to get. So, we'll look and make sure that we're going to get enough phone signal to do the kind of work that we need to do. Which is really important for us. And so we'll map those things out well in advance. So for example, next week, I know we're heading down to San Diego, and that's a back-to-back drive day for us. So Wednesday and Thursday of next week, I have blocked off. I have no meetings those days. So, you can't schedule me. My Calendly is blocked off, so nobody else can book time with me. And just sort of, knowing that kind of stuff and being prepared in advance for those things. And my team and my colleagues know that I'll be hard to reach. They know that they can call me. I'm happy. I'd love to talk on the phone when I'm
nothing passes
day.
the time like a phone conversation while you got 6 hours ahead of you.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. But we try to do it that way. We try to be intentional about it in that way. And then, depending on where we are, I'm really looking forward. So in San Diego, the place that we're staying at, beautiful RV resort on the water near a marina. But the thing that I'm most excited about is that it's one of these Southern California, 25-mile bike paths near
Mm.
there. And so it's been too long, and I'm still, working off my my holiday feasting. So I'm very excited to be able to get back on my bike and get some good cardio in that way in the mornings. And so I'll build that kind of thing into my day too.
You mentioned self-care, some of the things you do, meditation and gratitude list, and you touched there on exercise. Going a little bit deeper on that, are there any other things that you've routines, including if you want to expound on exercise, any other things that you have adopted as sort of like fundamental practices to keep you in somewhat of a routine and kind of, yeah, I guess that's the way
Yeah.
to frame it, like in somewhat of a routine.
Yeah. Well, I'm a big morning routine guy, right? So
Me
I
too.
have, really, you know, four core elements to my morning routine. And I certainly don't get them every day, but but so those things are number one. I do a gratitude list, as I mentioned. So I make a list of five things that I'm grateful for, and I actually have a group of folks who I text that to, and so that's great because it jogs my memory when I forget to do it, but it also keeps me in touch with the things that other folks are grateful for, and so that's really great. For me to see if I'm having a day where, making a list of five things is a challenge. It's great to see, other people's stuff sort of, get me over that hump. So that's one thing. Gratitude list is one. Number two is meditation. I'm not like a yogi, off in the woods. I use an app. I use the Headspace app, and I do that for at least 10 minutes a day. One of the highlights for me in the last 2 years is we stayed in a campground in Joshua Tree called Indian Cove, and there's these beautiful mountains made of boulders. And the coolest thing I've done was I went up there and literally sat on a boulder in the morning sun on my face and had my meditation there. Like that was just an
Oh,
absolutely incredible experience. Not every day is like that. I'm usually sitting right over here, 3 feet to my left, with the curtains drawn and meditating for 10 minutes. Number three is I try to eat a healthy breakfast. So, trying to get something that's, not Cracker Barrel pancakes every day. So, so starting my day with something like that. And number four is some form of exercise, whether that's, taking the dog on a long walk or going for a hike or going for a bike ride. My ideal is to do, get up early and do all four of those things before I start my workday. That doesn't always happen that way. Sometimes I'll have to, put a hike in later in the day or, do something or, whatever it is. But, I find that if I am able to do, four of those things, most of the 7 days out of the week, I am in a better place. I'm easier to be around. I'm more focused and bring more energy and passion to my work and to my relationships. And so, yeah, so that's my morning routine. You may have gotten more than you wish for with that answer, Chase. I hope that was okay.
no, no, not at all. I think it's really helpful. Actually, we share a lot of the same. I'm also a morning routine person. I even recently just wrote like a article about it for our blog at Doist, just about
Oh,
how
cool.
important having those things that you sort of, like you said, not always are going to do, but you kind of tell yourself, I'm always going to do these 2 or 3 or 4 things. The phrase I use for them is non-negotiables, and just having your non-negotiables, like the little things that you're going to do to start your day that are going to get you off on the right foot. And yeah, they're all very, very similar. I've struggled with the meditation. My wife's tried to get me on board, and I've tried it multiple times. I've tried Headspace, and I always fade out. So I'm not proud of that, but I know that I need it, and I need to. I feel the desire to get it back into my life.
I would say, yeah, it's hard. And I fell off probably for like 3 or 4 months, in the summer, actually, with the meditation piece. I was better about the physical exercise stuff because where I was, it was easier for me, at my family's house to ride my bike every day for 45 minutes. So I was doing that a lot, which is sort of arguably a form of meditation.
Yeah.
My unsolicited advice is if you can't get into the meditation thing, I can send you some stuff, just doing some breathing exercises, just, some, literally like 90 seconds of box breathing is, certainly a form of meditation. And I find that actually almost even more centering than meditation. So I'll send you something.
Yeah, I would love that. I recently participated in my first like breath work exercise and
Yeah.
was blown away by the experience actually. So
Yeah.
that was literally a week or so ago. So I'm more curious about this. And I also agree with you, like the moving meditation, like there's some exercise that I participate in that I've found is really the closest thing to meditation that I can get, where my mind literally kind of turns off. Like I get to the
Yeah.
end of the workout and I've only been focusing on my breathing and my body movement and like not thinking about like anything in the outside world for 20 or 30 minutes. And I'm like, I can't do that in any other
Yeah.
way. So it's not to be
Yeah.
discredited, like I think there's
No.
something to that.
Well, and I think too, something else, that's, maybe obvious, but maybe, lost sight of is that, one of the advantages that we have living in the time that we do, if you are a digital nomad or if you're trying to pursue that lifestyle, and whether you're living in an RV in the US or you're living internationally, the availability of this stuff, whether it's through apps or, YouTube videos, a 20-minute yoga workout or a 10-minute breath or 5-minute breath exercise on YouTube, like these things are really available. And so there's a lot of stuff that I incorporate. I have this little, my dear friend who runs an amazing business called Kaya Studios, Stacy Lombados, gave us this at the first workforce retreat. She gave us this little sort of 5-minute, it's not even a high intensity workout. It's sort of like, quick stretching and like doing these little, you do some squats and you do some like doing this with your arms. And so I'll do that if I just have a couple minutes between calls, just to sort of get the blood flowing. And if I do that, 4 or 5 times during the day, I get up at the end of the day after doing, 3 sets of 10 or 15 squats 5 times a day. And my legs are like, whoa, like what,
Yeah.
what happened? Like I got to work out. So, just even getting the blood flowing in those kinds of ways. But, it's super important. I have found for me to be intentional about incorporating those kinds of things in my day, and if I don't, I'll just be a grumpy jerk.
Yeah.
So, gotta keep that up.
We probably all need that more than, I mean, wherever you're working from, like, if you're sedentary throughout a lot of the day, like it cannot hurt to just incorporate a little bit of stretching and exercise throughout the day. And I think even on workforce, which is where we're going to go to next, and I want to spend some time before we have to let you get back to real work in a few minutes. So I want to make sure to spend a little bit more time here. Actually, let me read something from, if you don't mind, from your LinkedIn profile, which I think was like really an eloquent way to kind of talk about what workforce is all about, because I'm sure some people listening are not yet familiar with it, but they should definitely check out workforce. At workforce, we know that the future is already here. We know that how you work is more important than where you work. We know that butts and seats managers just need some new tools. We know that commuting in a car is as bad for the soul as it is for the environment. And we know that remote work is as good for a company's bottom line as it is for its employees. Like, I just want to like do a mic drop and just be like, yep, Jesse said it. It's so well said. And I think it really does. I mean, it's perfectly encapsulates what workforce is all about. So if you could just real quick to tell people, a little bit more about what workforce is, and then we can spend a few minutes talking about how cool it is that you've built this while traveling around the US and really practicing what you preach from the Airstream.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that. You're hired, Chase. That was a great read. And so, yeah, so Workforce is a digital media brand, the first and only digital media brand dedicated to flexible and remote work, or as the phrase we're trying to promulgate is location independence, which is one that you used earlier and I love. And the goal of Workforce is to be the authority for location independent professionals. So for people who work remotely, who want to work remotely, for the businesses that employ them, giving them information and tools so that they can thrive. My background is in digital media. I worked in the past for some large digital media companies and ran brands like TechCrunch and Engadget, and helped work on brands like the Huffington Post. And for me, long before I lived in the Airstream, I found myself as sort of a digital nomad. I was based in San Francisco. I was working there, but my job involved a lot of travel. So my company was based in New York. So I was spending at least 1 week per month in New York. I was traveling nationally and internationally to client meetings and conferences and all these kinds of things. And When I was back in San Francisco, if I needed to be in the office, I was in the office. If I didn't need to be in the office, nobody was looking around saying, "Where's Jesse?" In other words, I was being treated as an adult. And so, for me, I sort of looked around one day and found myself as a digital nomad. And my company went through some restructuring and some mergers. I wasn't sure if I was going to have a job or if I was going to want the job that I had. And so I wanted to look around. And when I thought about what was important to me, it was less about, I want to go work for this company or that company. And it was much more about, I wanted to have that kind of flexibility that I had found sort of by accident in my job. And when I, armed with that perspective, when I went out and looked and tried to find, articles about how to find jobs like that or how to work that way, or, a job board to help me find roles that met that criteria, there wasn't really much out there. And so I was frustrated for about 30 seconds. And then I said, wait a minute, a thing or two about digital media brands. If you wish that this existed, maybe other people would too. And so that sort of was the genesis of what ended up becoming Workforce. I've been working for the last 2 years to really bring that to fruition. So we incorporated the company in April of 2019 and began working on it and developing the strategy and the content and the product. And then, less than a year later, this crazy thing happened to our world called COVID-19. And all of a sudden, tens of millions more people began working remotely. In that case, there was a momentary or a couple of days of frustration that we weren't live yet. To help, shape that conversation and to really help people who might have found themselves in this position. But it ended up being a little bit of a blessing for us in that we were able to sort of recalibrate and, take into account that there were a lot of people out there who now found themselves working remotely, who found themselves doing so in less than ideal circumstances. And so, I refer to pandemic remote work as, not ideal state remote work, right? It's not typical to not be able to go to a coffee shop or to have difficulty asking or accessing a co-working space. It's certainly not typical to have the kids learning remotely or attending remote school while you're trying to work remotely. And so a lot of the content, as you mentioned, Chase, is centered around how do you help people in those situations? And so we have a whole section on Workforce about wellness and, tips for people who've been working remotely for a long time or people who've been working remotely only during the pandemic, about how do you maintain physical, mental, spiritual wellness in a situation where your office is also your bedroom potentially. And I think that one of the main keys is creating boundaries and saying to yourself, okay, I'm going to work now. One of the tips that I give people is put on pants.
Yeah, it's very basic, but very valid.
It's something I do it every day. For me, like I have to do that. I have to put on pants and put on maybe even a shirt with a collar and sit down and really focus on the fact that I'm going to work. But there's a lot more than that. We're also trying to create content that is insightful and informative for leaders of companies. So, how do you manage remote teams? How do you try to maintain company culture when you're in a reactive remote situation? As I say, we're really trying to become a one-stop shop for people who work flexibly or remotely and trying to embrace what I think is going to be this new hybrid future where there's some office and there's some remote. We just really want to be that place, that one-stop shop for this whole community, which is really exciting.
Yeah, it is packed full with amazing content. And I have to also comment on the from my background on like the marketing and design of it all. It's really done to a very high quality, and I think is already becoming that one-stop shop, that focal point that people are turning to, experienced or inexperienced, for high quality content from experts and people on your team. And it's just all really done to a high degree. And I think that's what makes it so amazing, is that and such a cool piece to the story, that you're doing this while driving around the country in an Airstream, and it just totally bucks that trend of you need to have the butt in the seat and be sitting in front of a laptop all day to produce something that's awesome. That's not the case.
Yeah, it's entirely possible. it's something that with the accessibility that we have with high-speed data, and that comes from the phone, right? So we're having this video conference and recording this podcast now. I'm using cellular data to do that. I don't even need, home-based Wi-Fi fiber internet. And so, the accessibility of that allows me to work and collaborate with a team. My team is spread across the country, across the US, across the world, and we're able to collaborate seamlessly. In fact, probably better in a lot of ways than we would if we were tied to an office. And so that's been something that has really, come home for me, is that it's not, we're truly living in a global world now, and the expansion of talent on a global level has been something that's enabled us to, to turn out the product that we have. I'm so flattered that you mentioned the brand identity and the design of the site. My CTO who designed most of the site is based in San Francisco. My designer who did the brand identity is based in New York. My designer who does a lot of the stuff that's on the site right now is also a digital nomad who lives in an Airstream. And the company the CMS, so the backbone of the site, is actually a company called Ghost, and they're a fully distributed company. So that Ghost is, sort of an open source version of WordPress, and they are truly global, all over the world. And so all of these things are available. We didn't invent any of this. we took the Lego pieces off the shelf and built what you see with Workforce, which is pretty cool. And we're really, really proud of what we've done.
I'm so impressed and just enjoying watching the journey and watching it all unfold. I really enjoyed getting to know you and your story a little bit better today. I've got to let you get back to work. I promised I would by now. So we'll unfortunately have to wrap it up here. I think chapter 2 may be necessary because there's so much more I wanted to dive into. I'm going to hit you real quick with 2 or 3 quick answer questions for me, just because we didn't get into everything we wanted, and then I'll let you get back to work. Fair enough?
Yeah, no, let's do it. I can do this all day, Chase. This is a lot of fun.
All right. Me too. That's the point of this show. Like it should just be like a lot of fun and really entertaining and interesting stories. And I think we've hit on that with your story today. So question number 1, where are you moving to when you finally put some roots down somewhere first?
Pressure question. Well, and I should say, my wife is not in the trailer right now, and I would need. No,
this is Jesse's answer.
So my answer. Well, oh God, see how hard it is, right? So first of all, we're going to do the digital nomad thing. I think we're probably going to spend the fall and winter traveling around. So on that list are places like Savannah, Georgia, Rome, Paris, Buenos Aires, and Medellin, and maybe Mexico City. Right. So that's within the next, 12 to 18 months is my answer. Long term, the place that we have visited of the 39 states, and I don't know how many cities, the place that I was blown away by and really loved was Sedona, Arizona. It's like they put a city at the bottom of the Grand Canyon. It's unbelievably beautiful. I don't think, you could live there for 10 years and not explore all the hiking and biking trails. And it's a cool kind of crunchy vibe. So I really loved Sedona and could imagine myself living there at some point in the future.
Awesome. That's a great answer, and a place that I have not visited and would love to. What geographically, or just, as a particular place in the US, which place has surprised you the most, either positively or negatively on your journeys?
I would say, I mentioned Wyoming, that whole like Wyoming, Nebraska, Utah, parts of Colorado, like, and Nevada too, is so empty, in the best possible way. I grew up in New York, in the suburbs of New York. I still love cities. I lived in San Francisco for a long time. And, and we hear about overcrowding and the population. Maybe that's true, but it's not true out west. And the austere beauty of the emptiness of those spaces is so profound and so beautiful. That has been really surprising, but really inspiring and very beautiful.
I will just, before I ask the next question, just echo that. I did a road trip through the U.S. Years ago, and Wyoming and Montana stood out to me as like, I didn't have expectations at all. I was excited about the Pacific Coast Highway and getting up into
Yeah.
the Rockies and the Southwest and everything. And then I got there and I was like, this wasn't even on my radar. This is amazing.
Yeah. 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 It's mind blowing. And something that I hope a lot of people will try to see at some point. It's really beautiful.
Last two questions. Is there anything that you desperately miss about the more traditional lifestyle, thinking back to your life in San Francisco?
I miss, like, as I said, like, we're able to find, data connection and make it work. I miss not having to think about that all the time, right? So not having, like, for example, I'm not using my trailer Wi-Fi. I'm tethering to my phone right now because I know I get better data speeds. Like, I just wish I didn't have to deal with that and think about that everywhere we're going. And then sometimes you get to a really beautiful place and you got nothing. And, it's, do we leave or do I go hike up on that hill and, try and like find signal? So I wish that weren't the hassle that it is, but it's worth it at the end of the day. At some point, like, I'd love to, I think my wife would love for me to have an office and be able to close the door and, not hear one end of a conversation. I think that's probably something that she would say and I would say too.
Couples goals.
Yeah. All trade-offs that we know that we're making and that are perfectly acceptable, understanding that it's a limited, we're not going to live this way forever and ever. So it's cool.
Yeah. All a net positive in the end, but fair enough to point out some of the challenges. And last question, people talk a lot about the future of work. And you mentioned this earlier, the future of work has sort of arrived a bit early with COVID and some people say 10, 15 years early because of the situation that we find ourselves in. So what does the future of work mean to you? When people say future of work, what does that look like for you?
I'm in the camp too that I would say that it's probably been fast forwarded by at least 5 or 10 years because of this pandemic. And for me, I think it's one of the silver linings of the pandemic. I think two things. I think, first of all, the future of work, which has already arrived, is distributed and hybrid, right? So it's going to be, more distributed, more people working in more ways and more places. That doesn't mean that everybody, no offense, is going to be working in Spain, right? Or with a laptop on a beach in Fiji. It just means that they might be working, from an office, 2 days a week as opposed to 5 days a week. Because there are certainly some benefits for the offices. We say offices are optional at Workforce, not that they're, the devil. But I think that the biggest change that I hope that employees realize is that with this change to a distributed future, employees are really in the driver's seat. And I think that companies, if they have any desire to retain or hire top talent, are going to have to offer flexibility for all of their employees. Because if they don't offer flexibility in some form to their employees are going to simply, go to somebody who will. And so, for any company to want to hire and retain top talent, and that's not just Facebook and Twitter, it's every company everywhere in this country and in the world. It is now going to be table stakes. It's not going to be a perk. It's going to be, a benefit that all companies are going to have to offer if they want to remain competitive. And so I think that, the sooner employees realize that and that they have the authority to be empowered and say that, hey, I do need to have some flexibility, that they're empowered to do that and that they will get what they want.
What could be a better example of the fact that remote work can work than the CEO of a publication called Workforce running a global team from his Airstream ping-ponging across the U.S. I love it. You guys are practicing what you preach, and it's fun to watch from an Instagram standpoint, and really, really fun to talk more in depth with you about it today. And please, everybody, listen to me when I say that the information on the site is awesome. Jesse, where can they follow you, both personally and Workforce? And any last minute comments you have before we let you sign off?
Sure. Yeah. So it's Workforce, spelled with no O's, workforce.com. The joke is that because offices are optional, but the truth is that because that was the domain that was available. It's a catchy startup name. And so they can go to workforce.com. You can also follow Workforce on LinkedIn. You can find me on LinkedIn. Jesse Chambers, JESSECHAMBERS. And if anybody in your audience, has any thoughts or feedback on what we're doing with Workforce, or even has any questions about, water bladders or epic wipes, you can always email me. My email is Jesse, JESSE @workforce.com. Would love to hear from your audience for real. We're really excited about what we brought to the world with Workforce. I'm really proud of it, but we're just getting started. We're only about 2 months old right now. The gift of feedback, whether it's constructive or, positive, I'd love to hear it. So we really genuinely love for your audience to engage with what we're doing. And I would love their feedback in terms of this article is great, or, hey, you're not talking about this. Would love to learn more about that. We're really trying to learn from our audience about what it is that they need, and we want to be able to give it to them. So would love that. And as a parting shot, Chase, it's just been a real pleasure. It's been a pleasure to get to know you and to be inspired by what it is that you're doing. I think this podcast is the latest in a string of things that you're doing that's really inspiring. And, a little teaser for your audience is that, Chase's thoughts and expertise is going to be finding its way to Workforce very soon too. So hopefully you'll be able to read some of what Chase's shared wisdom on the pages of Workforce. We're really excited to be able to share that with the world too.
Oh man, I appreciate that. It's an honor, and like I said, it's just been super fun just chit-chatting with you and learning more about your journey. And I'm super excited to collaborate with Workforce, and I know the people listening today will have taken a lot away from this from you. So thanks again, Jesse. We'll have to do it again. I'll let you get back to work now, but really appreciate it, and have a great rest of the journey to San Diego.
Thanks, Chase. I appreciate it, and look forward to staying in touch. And best of luck with this effort in this podcast. I think it's great what you're doing.
Awesome, man. Thank you so much.
All right. Take care.
Thanks for tuning in today from wherever you are in the world. Once again, I'm Chase, and this has been another episode of About Abroad. You can visit aboutabroad.com to get our latest updates and listen to past episodes, or find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, really anywhere you get your podcasts. On that note, if you enjoyed the show, feel free to subscribe, and if inclined, leave a few stars and a review. It's truly, truly appreciated and will help more wanderers just like you find us. Until the next time, adios from España.